Hi, I'm Lucas, and this is TOEFL Tuesday. And every Tuesday, I talk about the TOEFL. This Tuesday, I'm talking about some vocabulary. Now, this isn't really just for the TOEFL, but it's helpful vocabulary in general. Some phrasal verbs. Phrasal verbs cause trouble, especially for students who haven't been using conversational English very much, who study by books more often. So words like be up to, for example, can be confusing because they don't really have a clear definition if you just look at the parts. Now this phrase, to be up to, imagine, for example, I ask, what have you been up to? This is a very common phrase, but what does it mean? What is this up to part? Well, this is what you are doing, really. It just means what things you've been working on, what you've been doing with your time. I should note that what have you been up to is a very common phrase, and it just means how have you been? What are you doing to start a conversation? But we can also use up to in a very similar form to mean something very different. For example, I think he's up to something. Okay, if he's up to something, well, that means that he's doing something that's maybe bad, something that I'm a little bit suspicious about. What is that? What is he doing? So to be up to something can be a bad thing, especially with that word something. He's up to something. So up to can just be generally doing in your life, what hobbies you've been doing, how your work has been, or it can be that suspicious doing something bad. Let's take a look. We've looked at a up phrasal verb. Let's take a look at a down phrasal verb. Get down to. Okay, so down to is another phrase that has a common word with no clear meaning. But here's an example. Let's get down to work. It's usually down to work or possibly down to business. And that means that you are just, well, working. Often with these kinds of phrasal verbs, with words that are very common, like get and down, or be and up, often the meaning is also very common. That they often don't mean much more than a common phrase. So down to work, well, it just means work, right? But here's another usage of down to and get down to. If I say, when we get down to it. Now, I'm going to give you some facts after this that are really the basic information. I'm going to ignore the more complicated facts and just talk about the basic stuff next. So when we get down to it, and then some core simple information. Okay. Now all of these could appear on your TOEFL. Let's imagine situations. What have you been up to? This would be very common or it's very possible in a conversation on the TOEFL during the listening section or on the speaking section, especially in the conversation between two students, that is speaking task 5, that is about one student's problems, because then they're going to talk about their lives together. So this is a very possible way that conversation could start. How about this? Let's get down to work. Again, this could be during a conversation between a student and a professor. Often the professor wants to work through something with the student. So if they're saying, okay, let's start thinking and working, this could be an introduction to that. Get down to business, get down to work. And how about this? When we get down to it, this could be in a lecture. If, for example, a professor wants to talk about the most basic causes of some phenomenon, some event. And they want to say, well, these other causes aren't important. When we get down to it, the basic clauses are more important. Okay, I hope that helps a little bit with these kind of confusing phrases, ups and downs, with no clear meaning. We'll talk more about phrasal verbs in another lesson. Come back every Tuesday. I'm here every Tuesday. Or check out TOEFL.magoosh.com for more specifically TOEFL advice. Bye-bye.